It's 1778. Daniel Boone is 43 years old, been captured by Shawnee warriors, adopted by Chief Blackfish himself. They shaved his head, painted him, called him Sheltowee, Big Turtle. Most men would have broken. Most men would have started speaking soft to stay alive. Daniel Boone started planning how to escape and how to come back and burn their whole world down. You're listening to a new segment of the RoundTable Sessions, Blood on the Saddle, the podcast where we tell you true stories of the hardest men who ever walked the frontier, and we pull the lessons out of their scars so that you can be that man today. I'm going to be your host, just a guy who still believes a man ought to be dangerous, dependable, and dead serious about protecting what's his. Every show, we'll sit down at this fire and we'll talk about one legend. No academics, no apologies. Just the truth, raw, bloody, and useful. Today, Daniel Boone, the man who walked into the wilderness with nothing but a rifle and a promise, and walked out leading an entire nation behind him. Let's ride. He was born in Pennsylvania, but the East was already getting crowded, getting soft. By 14, he's hunting alone in the deep woods, bringing back deer a grown man couldn't drag. By 20, he's fighting French and Indians with George Washington in the French and Indian War, learning how thin the line is between living and dying when steel meets steel. But the real story starts in 1769. Boone is 34, married, kids, and he looks at the Appalachian Mountains and says, "That's not a wall, that's a door." Him and 5 other hard bastards cut the wilderness road through the Cumberland Gap, 200 miles of pure hell. Grizzlies, rattlesnakes, Cherokee war parties. They got ambushed so many times, Boone stopped counting. One night, his own brother was killed and scalped right beside him. Boone did not go home. He buried his brother under a cairn of stones, and he kept cutting that trail. That's the first lesson, man. Let's take a rifle break. When everything in your life is telling you to turn back, when the safe play is to go home, hug your kids, clock in, scroll your phone, and pretend you're content, that's exactly when a man is supposed to shoulder his pack and walk deeper into the dark. Most won't. That's why most stay small. Boone didn't. And because he didn't, you and I exist in a country that stretches to the Pacific. Hold that thought in your gut this week. When the alarm goes off at 4:30 in the morning and you don't feel like training. When your woman tests you. When the job wants you to bend the knee, remember Boone. Remember him standing over his dead brother's grave and choosing the harder road anyway. That's the blood on the saddle, brother, and we're just getting started. Boonesboro, Kentucky. Just a handful of log cabins, ringed by wilderness that wants every one of you dead. Boone's brought his family, 40 other settlers, and nothing but what they can carry on their backs and pack horses. There are Indians on every ridge, and winter, it's coming like a hammer. July 1776, the Declaration gets signed back east. Same weekend, Boone's daughter, Jemima, 14 years old, and 2 of her friends get snatched out of a canoe by Cherokee and Shawnee raiders. Most men would have ridden to the fort, barred the gate, and prayed. Boone grabs his rifle, calls 3 of the hardest men still breathing, and says, "We're getting my girl back today." They track the war party 4 days straight. No sleep. Chewing jerked venison and rage. On the 4th morning, they catch them on a buffalo trace. Boone doesn't parley. He and his boys open up from 3 sides, drop 4 warriors, and before the smoke clears, the rest scatter like quail. Jemima runs to her daddy, barefoot, dress torn, eyes wide. Boone just puts one big hand on the back of her neck, looks at the men who rode with him, and says, "Obliged." That rescue made newspapers all the way to London, but it also painted the biggest target you've ever seen on Daniel Boone's back. 2 years later, February 1778, Boone's out with 30 men making salt for the settlement. 450 Shawnee surrounded them before sunrise. Outnumbered 15-1, Boone walks out under a white flag, not to beg, but to buy time. He talks Chief Blackfish into taking them alive, promises the whole settlement will surrender come spring when the women and kids won't freeze. They believe him. Take him to Detroit. British pay $400 for Boone's scalp, alive. Blackfish says no, adopts him instead, names him Sheltowee, Big Turtle, makes him run the gauntlet. Boone runs it like a freight train, breaks through, and from that day on, he's playing the longest con of his life, smiling at council fires, learning their plans, and waiting. June 16th, 1778, he overhears the British and Shawnee are fixing to wipe Boonesborough off the map in September. That night, he slips his guard and starts running. 160 miles. 4 days. No food, but 1 deer he kills with a club and a knife. He shows up at the fort gate looking like a corpse that forgot to die. He walks straight to his wife Rebecca, kisses her once, and says, "Pack what you can carry. We're holding this ground, or we're dying on it." Let's take another rifle break. Listen close. A man's greatest strength isn't the weight he can lift. It's the promises he refuses to break. Even when every sensible voice says walk away, Boone promised those settlers a home. He promised his daughter she'd never be a slave. And he paid for those promises with 4 days of hell on bleeding feet. You've got promises too. To your woman, to your kids, to the man you swore you'd become. When the easy road opens up, when surrender starts sounding smart, remember Boone running barefoot through the briars with 400 warriors behind him. That's the price. September 1778, the siege of Boonesborough. 10 days, 450 warriors and British regulars against 30 men and a handful of women loading rifles. They try everything. Fire arrows, a tunnel to blow the walls. Boone walks out under another white flag, stalls them for 2 more days while his boys dig a counter tunnel and pour water down the bastard's hole. On the 10th morning, the Indians pull out. They lost over 40. Boonesborough lost 2. Boone never got rich. Surveyors and politicians stole most of his land claims. He moved west 3 more times, chasing elbow room. Missouri, dead broke at the end, living in a cabin his son built. He died in 1820 at 85. Still wearing buckskin, still carrying the same long rifle, tick licker. They buried him on the banks of the Missouri. 25 years later, Kentucky stole the bones back, or so they claim, because even in death, they wanted a piece of the man who opened the door to the West. Here's the reckoning, brother. everything you love, your family, your freedom, the fact you can own land, carry a gun, tell the government to kiss your ass when it oversteps. It all started with men like Boone, who looked at an empty wilderness and said, "This is ours now. Come and take it if you think you're hard enough." He never wore a crown, but every time an American man stands his ground, when the world says kneel, Boone's spirit is standing right behind him, hand on his shoulder, whispering, "Hold the line." That's your inheritance. Not money, not comfort. A legacy of unbreakable men who paid in blood and scars so you could be free. Don't you dare waste it on softness. Next episode, we ride with a man who made Boone look gentle, Kit Carson, the quietest killer in West ever birthed. Until then, stay hard, stay dangerous, and I'll see you on the trail.